Hello all, in this video we are going to reveal the top 10 openings played by the Indian teams during the last Olympiad. Let's start with number 10. We have three openings tied on the 9th, 10th and 11th places, so let's reveal the beginning. And the first one is a novelty compared with the global open choices. It's a nimzo-indian defense. It's not a surprise because India teams and India players are known by being specialists in the nimzo-indian. Nimzo-indian starts with d4, then knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, and bishop b4. The idea from black is to take the knight on c3, and then when white takes back, gets double pawns on the c file and a bad bishop to develop. So this is the idea. Now it's white to move. There are several moves, including strange f3, but normally the two main lines are e3, a more solid approach, or bishop bishop no sorry queen c2. The idea is when the bishop gets the knight, the queen takes back but losing some tempos. So normally black waits for a3 to force to take, and sometimes if white takes too long to play a3, maybe the bishop even can come back again. So the nimzo india was uh, the first surprise compared with the global teams, but not a surprise considering it's an Indian team. Also tied in ninth place the French defense. Well, the French defense we have covered before. It's e4, e6. Then we go d4 and black contests the center, attacking immediately d4 pawn. Now white has three options: to it can advance, it can take, or it can defend or protect. So basically taking gives just a symmetrical game with less ambition for white, so normally not the option. Advancing, black attacks the base of the pawn chain, and white tries to keep the chain, so basically trying to play this this solid game. And the other option, normally also very popular, is to protect. Now black has also several options. This one is the Rubinstein variation, where now black can play the knight and then tries to bring the other knight to develop fast, or it can bring the bishop, and the idea is to get the bishop outside before bring the knights. The idea it will be to take one of these knights and play this structure. This is the Rubinstein. Then we have the classical, where knight develops but then attacks, and then the counter attack on the typical d4 pawn. This is a typical from the French defense. Then everyone attacks the pawn and all gets around this team. And finally, I forgot to tell this more sharp variation on the last video about top 10 openings played on the Olympiad. We advance, then black tries, and then black decides to take the knight and double the pawns for white. Then we get a very sharp game. Normally the queen will go press this pawn, for example, like here, and then we have a game very sharp that we need to know. So this was the French, also in ninth place. The other nine opening that you see over there is caro-kann. This is a surprise compared with the global openings played during the Olympiad, because if you remember well, the caro-kann was the second from all the teams. So interesting that the India team players didn't use it that much. Nevertheless, it's on the top nine. So the caro-kann also, like the French, attacks the center, but now the bishop is free. The opposite, it's the knight that can't go to c6 immediately. Then, as in the French, we have three options again. to take, to advance, or to protect. Normally, players like to advance more, but if we protect, normally black takes. Now there's this option where we play this structure very solid, or we can bring the bishop and then play this one. This is if we defend. Uh, if we take, if we take, normally white goes for the Panov attack, a very sharp approach, but it also can go for a more simple development with the bishop, but also less ambitious. And finally, if we advance, black has two options to bring out the bishop of the pawn chain. The idea is to have the bishop develop outside a future pawn chain. And white now can continue developing or going for the tal variation. And the other approach is a bit more strange at first because we are moving the pawn twice and then taking and then going back for a counter attack. So this is the caro-kann, and let's move on to reveal what was the eighth opening played by the Indian teams. And another fresh opening compared with global teams, the Catalan opening. Not that surprised because Indian players with white also are seen playing this one, but it's more like a system. The idea is I'm going to fianchetto to my king side bishop, light square bishop. I'm trying to develop and attack along the lines. So, for example, just one simple approach, and then sorry, not this one. First I go with the knight, then black can also fianchetto. It depends on what back chooses, and for example it can go on the center and then I gambit my pawn. See that compared with the queen's gambit, I don't have my light square bishop on f1, so I'm giving the pawn away, but it's not that strong to take the pawn. Of course, it's an option because I will attack it and have a strong pressure along this long diagonal. As you can see, you can't defend it with b5 because otherwise I take the rook. So it's kind of an interesting idea. And if white, for example, if black tries to defend the pawn, then I can keep on and the game goes on. The Catalan approach is characterized basically by having a simple system with the king side fianchetto. So another opening covered, and now let's move on to find out who was the seventh opening. And the seventh opening is again the London system. Also not a surprise, it's one of the trending openings. And if you have seen my video about what the global teams have played, you know already that I cover three options. Normally, this one is the main line where we can go with several approaches. The idea will be to protect our pawn, for example, like this, and if it attacks, I will get this structure, then develop my by knight, etc. This is the main line from the London opening. The other approach is to go with the Jobaba London. We wanted to play e4, so black doesn't allow, and now we bring the London bishop to f4 and we get the Jobaba London. And finally, the other possibility is to just keep on with the same plan, and we are going to play the Indian London. Okay, so three choices to play for the London system in number 7. Now let's find out another opening, and Queen's Gambit decline. Not a surprise, it's a common opening. Again, very simple. We start with the Queen's Gambit, then the Queen's Gambit is declined. We reinforce the option to take. Black can defend, and now white can go for the exchange. decline Queen's Gambit or play the Ragozin or any other opening like Tahash. I don't know if it's Tahash the name, but okay. And so normally we get this Queen's Gambit typical declined structure. Uh, let's move on to the other three openings that were in number four. I forgot to tell that three were tied again, and the other one is Slav defense. The Slav defense it starts with the Queen's Gambit and it's declined with the move c6. Then White can keep on playing, and then we can decide if we take playing an open Slav or if we protect playing the closed Slav or semi-Slav approach. So the Slav a bit a surprise because it was a surprise to see it in top 10 of the global teams, and as you can see now the India teams selected as one of the top four, so very interesting to understand that. Also, at the same, it's revealed already, it's the Spanish opening in fourth place. The Spanish opening, the classical, the kings of the openings, is e4, e5. We attack the pawn. The pawn is defended by knight c6. We now attack the knight. And as you already know, we can play this barreling defense or we can attack the bishop. The bishop now can take the knight for the exchange, but this doesn't give a pawn because, as I told you in the last video, black has this option, and now when it retreats it gets back the pawn and a simple endgame. So normally it's not an option, or at least when white takes the pawn, normally it doesn't take back the center pawn with the knight, preferring to castle or so on. So if it retreats, then black can keep on with a normal development. For example, now we are protecting the pawn, so black needs to attack the bishop. Now we cover and castle, and we are ready to play the Braya, the Zaitsev, the Shigorin, etc., and so on. One of the most common openings and one of the most classical ones at the top. And India teams, of course, they know how to play it. So let's reveal the top three, and we start with the English opening. The English opening, really high. Uh, if you notice that the Indian players do like to play a lot d4, c4 it's always coming also as a way to play d4 after and avoid certain move orders. But normally black can opt for different approaches, either the reverse Sicilian or the symmetrical English. Normally against the reverse Sicilian, white will fianchetto the bishop and then develop and then start to play something in these lines. And so the English opening also a top three opening to be considered. And of course we can't be surprised, even if we normally Arias only use the 2e4 d4, we can't be surprised to see at the top level starting with c4 or even knight f3 and so on. So top two, I don't know if you can guess, but it's really interesting. And top two is the Italian opening. It's interesting because we normally place Italian below the Spanish. We don't consider it as trendy as other openings, but as you see, for the India teams, it's a very solid opening. They know it very well, and they are not afraid to use it to try to win some games. And the Indian defense starts with the same moves as the Spanish, but then the bishop goes to c4, attacking the weak point in f7. Now, black has two main choices: either play in a symmetrical way and we get a very normal strategical game where we can go basically with very calm moves to develop and then slowly try to keep our advantage, or we can go with the two knights approach and then white can decide to play solid with d3 or go a bit more sharper with the knight g5 approach where black normally is forced to play d5, giving a pawn up. Now if black takes, we can play a sacrifice, the fried liver attack that is characterized by now we are attacking two times this piece, so the king needs to go to the center and then we can keep on pressing this knight. But normally the top players don't sacrifice. They normally remove the knight to a5, attacking the bishop. We give a check and we have a pawn up, and then we get this very common position to play against the two knights. So this was the Italian opening, and also without much surprise, we can find out that the first one is the Sicilian defense, of course. It's still very common, but notice the following. In overall teams, they went with 21% playing the Sicilian, and the India players just are playing 40%. 14%, it's a bit lower. It's 7% lower than the 21 we get from all teams. So this teaches that India players prefer to go with other openings when they are with black, or at least they can shift the game to another kind of approach. So the Sicilian can be open or close. We have a lot of Sicilians to consider. We can play the close, we can play the Alpine, and so on. Or we can go, of course, we can still go knight f3 and then Grand Prix attack, also very popular, especially in the beginners players. But normally we can go either with e6, d6, or knight c6. This is the basics of the Sicilian. And after any of these moves, we go d4, and when it takes, we take back with the knight, and we get the open Sicilian. So no need to go deeper. If you want to review some more variations, I have the video with the top 10 Chess Olympiad openings with all the teams. But now for the Indian teams, we see and we can close with this very interesting list. If you want to compare, to make it more interesting, I can bring here the comparison. And if you notice, the big surprise is to see the caro-kann opening not being used by the Indian players as much as the other teams. Also, two very interesting new openings: the Catalan and the nimzo-indian, very characterized of the Indian players, and we don't see the King Indians defense at the top when we are talking about India. So both teams got gold medals, so probably they are doing something right. Hope you can enjoy these openings and hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please help the channel subscribing and liking the video. See you again and hope you have great games with these openings.